Good evening, I'm Harry Keeling, and on behalf of the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and Alaska Public Media, welcome to Hangar Flying. If you tuned in last time, we had John Wight on. John is an aviation professor at UAA, but he's also an incredibly experienced pilot. I have seen a lot of resumes and talked to a lot of people. Few could match John's experience internationally and nationally and here in Alaska. And one story they can't match for sure is a bewildering story of incarceration and suffering and courage. And I want John to tell you, our viewers, a story. John, would you start out and tell the story, please?
Absolutely, Harry. Okay, so it started off in South Africa, and it was a charter flight from Johannesburg, South Africa to Mauritius, the island of Mauritius. And it was with two diamond dealers who were going over to do business, and we set off. When we crossed over Madagascar, which is the island, and then we ran into some bad weather and diverted back and landed in Madagascar, where in fact we had permission to land. But when we landed, that permission was over a few days revoked. What had transpired behind the scenes was that the President, Rotsiraka of Madagascar, was good friends with Colonel Gaddafi of Libya. And Gaddafi called him up and said, hey, you know, don't let those guys go. We can use those guys. And so they tried. We were used for 7 years to try and negotiate Nelson Mandela, and there were 13 other political prisoners in South Africa. They wanted to get their release, or our release, in exchange for releasing them. And it never happened.
So you were in prison for 7 years for a crime you never committed?
Correct. For, you know, when we went to court, it was quite interesting. You sit there in court innocent, and then the prosecutor stands up and says he wants the death penalty. You know, and this is kind of a bit of a shock when you're sitting there, sort of kind of, who are we talking about here? Anyway, the trial went on, and at the end of the trial, we were sentenced to 5 years. We subsequently escaped from prison, two of the three of us. We were recaptured and got another 2-year sentence for the escape, plus a fine. During the escape, the escape was planned for my dad. My father's a pilot as well. He was coming over to fetch us. And they got a Baron, a Beechcraft Baron, and fitted it with fuel tanks to fly over, so they could fly from Johannesburg to Tananarive in Madagascar and back again, which would have been about a 8-9 hour flight. So they needed extra fuel tanks. And he tried that 3 times and wasn't successful. It was just never coordinated well.
Did he actually get to Madagascar?
Yeah, he did.
Wow.
He did.
So there's so many questions. Talk about what was it like in the prison?
Prison, you know, it's in Africa, and Africa generally is not a wealthy continent, so conditions were pretty bad. Conditions are pretty bad in a lot of African villages, and so if you talk about the prisons, it's even worse. So food was rice. We got kind of half a tin of rice a day. And we weren't treated particularly badly, except after the escape. After the escape, we were chained to the ground for, it was a couple of months. And we were fed when they felt like feeding us. And I was fortunate enough to get sick. I got hepatitis and went to hospital for a while. And then the food was better, but for the time, chained to the ground wasn't very good conditions.
So I think you had mentioned to me when you were talking about this before, that the reason the treatment changed was because they figured you must have had somebody on the outside with helping you escape, and they wanted their names. Is that right?
In fact, that's where with the escape, we got a route which was more coincident than anything else. We went out of the prison and we went in a straight line to a road to their highway, which isn't really much of a highway. And the plan was my dad would land on the road and he'd pick us up there. And so the authorities' deal was you could not have done that without assistance. So somebody helped you. So give us your accomplice and things will go better for you. Of course, there was no accomplice. We got out of prison and I just headed in the direction I thought the road was, and it happened to be a straight line. So,
were you able to communicate with your dad or with your family?
beforehand and afterwards through mail, kind of bribery. The whole prison system works on bribery. So we managed to bribe a guard to get money into the prison, and then we used that money to get letters out. So yes, we did the communication wasn't easy, but we managed to get letters out every now and then.
John, what an incredible story. I'd like to get you back on at least one more time to maybe finish the story, talk about some of the questions that are probably on people's minds. So,
Certainly.
ladies and gentlemen, I think you would have found, I think you probably found tonight's episode fascinating. Please tune in next time, and John will be back on and talk about his imprisonment and what happened when he finally got out of prison. So until then, fly safe.